How many of you are aware that every bit of activity in a living organism, somewhere there are proteins. Proteins are important class of biomolecules, okay? And like any other chemical, they are involved in variety of chemical reactions. In fact, many of them, a large number of them are involved not just about the structural activity, like forming the structure of the system, but they are prominent catalyst, biocatalyst, and you use the term called enzyme for them, correct? Enzyme. These are very big molecule. If you remember, on occasions I have talked about their respective corresponding sizes, just to give you some perspective. Remember, just like your water molecule, for example, has a molecular mass of, let's say, just 18 gram per mole, right? But your protein, it could be of the molecular size approximately from 5 into 10 to power of 5 to 10 1 into, I'm not saying that this is the limit, there are even bigger proteins. It could be, let's say, 10 to power of 6 gram per mole. Think about this. Here are some of the diagram that I have taken just to give you some perspective. You are seeing, you will know what these ribbons and then these stretches or the band represent. Don't worry about them. They are like short notation for a group of the sequence of amino acid which have formed certain structures here in the protein, and then that has come together to form this kind of compact structure. So this is like a compact structure of a protein. Any protein you talk about, it's like a long chain of amino acid. We will see that how it's a polymer. Okay, so proteins are polymer of monomers which are referred to as amino acid. But once they are prepared in any living organism by biological means, okay, they actually undergo something called as folding. And it's a very interesting thing to understand how the proteins fold. Scientists yet do not know complete answer for that. We understand them in terms of various interaction between one group versus another group, okay, and that's how the mostly the hydrogen bonding kind of interaction, some of the covalent interaction that stabilize this structure. But how does that come into existence, first thing is always a challenge to understand. So we do not know how a protein fold, and that's the biggest problem in the modern science, how a protein folds. That is a big question, okay? And you may ask the question, why are we talking about the folding of a protein? Well, let me tell you, you may have a protein which is a sequence of amino acid, but if it does not acquire a very specific structure, it is no more functional. For example, hemoglobin. This is the simplest protein that you are all aware of, right? Hemoglobin is a protein and its molecular mass is about 65,000 gram per mole. So that's a very big protein. Now think of that, if it does not fold properly, even a single amino acid is not in its right place, what will happen? That your hemoglobin will not be functional. It will not be able to carry the oxygen from your lung to the tissues and the tissues to lung. So every function, what is the function of hemoglobin? To carry oxygen, right? So every protein has got its function. Insulin has got its function, that's also protein. So the function of a protein is only achieved through its folded form, and every protein has only one unique form which is folded, nothing other than that, and that is what is responsible for its function. So the question arises then, if it is a chain of 2-3 amino acid, we can still think, okay, this will organize into certain structure. How does one assume that such a big long chain of hundreds and hundreds of amino acid in sequence, very specifically, and they fold only in one compact structure? So that's a very interesting problem of modern science, and that's called protein folding, okay? And not only the chemist involved in this sorting out the protein folding problem, but physicists and biologists, the computer scientists, people from all the walks of science and technology, they are involved in sorting out this understanding from various angles, okay? You cannot just think from one angle, try to work on this. But anyway, this is not something that is a matter of discussion. I'm simply introducing you right now so that you can appreciate better. Otherwise you will not know what I'm saying, because again it goes in the book as simple paragraph and then you don't have clarity about it, because it's not that easy to perceive. First of all, such a big chunk of molecule. Okay, so folded form of a protein, which is what is responsible for its function, is referred to as generally by the term called native protein. Okay, so if the protein is active, then it is referred to as native protein, and only the folded form of the protein will be native or active, and it will carry some active site. Remember, whenever we discuss about the enzymes also at some place, catalyst, they generally carry some active site, and that is where the activity happens, catalytic activity happens. So, and proteins have got many functions in our body. I've enlisted here just to give you some perspective, but I'm not going in detail of these. Be it DNA replication, be it any kind of activity, metabolic activity, your structural integrity of your body, and the cellular organisms, everything, everywhere you have proteins. That's why you require sufficient protein in your diet, because what you eat is digested and it is used as a raw material again to recreate the protein of requirement in our body. We don't swallow the protein and then our body absorbs them just like that. No, that protein of some food which is available from some food is not of use for us completely, the structure wise. Okay, but it is broken down. You will see the chemistry of that, and then the raw material is your amino acid. They are used as raw material by our body, and then we synthesize our own protein. Okay, where is protein? By cellular machinery. Okay, so that's remain the part of the biology and biochemistry. We are not going into that. Let's understand what we have to understand in this chapter is basically what this protein is in terms of a molecule. So we call it as biomolecule. Okay, so in terms of molecular structure, what it is, that's what we need to understand, and some of the chemical properties we need to understand. So proteins are biopolymers, and our body generally carries some of the 20 basic monomers. What are these monomers of these proteins? Are polymer, first of all. Okay, so these polymers are made up of sequence of amino acids, and there are 20 varieties of them, and they may be found in variety of ways. Okay, so what is an amino acid? The fact that amino acid, so there should be, this must be definitely an organic compound, and there must be some amino group. This amino acid carries definitely one NH2 group because amino, and it also carries COOH group. These are the fundamental functional groups on any of the amino acid. Now you can have variety of amino acid. For example, depending upon the carbon length, for example, right now I'm drawing amino acid where you have just one alkyl carbon, and the other carbon is, let's say, COOH group. Okay, here, and then one side I am attaching here NH2 group. So there is a amino group, there is a COOH group. The remaining thing I can fill up with, let's say, hydrogen, and then I can have hydrogen also, but I can have other alkyl group also, other hydrocarbons, so which can be represented by R. This is a general formula for any amino acid that is found in our body. But you see here, if you go by IUPAC, if you go by your conventional nomenclature, then carboxylic groups, next carbon to carboxylic group should be referred to as alpha carbon, right? So this is like one kind of amino acid where your amino group is on alpha carbon to carboxylic group. Okay, but you can have amino acid which can be not just alpha, but it could be beta, gamma, delta. So what I mean is you can have more carbon, and anyway we don't have to discuss them, but I'm just giving you the perspective. But this is given in your book that you can have higher length amino acid, higher carbon length amino acid also. You can have hydrogen, you can have R. Here also you can have some hydrogen, or it could be just R prime, R3 prime. Okay, you can even have hydrogen in place of them. So I'm saying that you can increase the carbon length and you can still have amino group and carboxylic group separated by more carbon. So this is, let's say, alpha, this is beta. So this is referred to as beta amino acid. This is alpha amino acid. If you increase one more, then alpha, beta, gamma. So like you can have amino acids which can be alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and so on. But somehow biology in our living organisms have chosen only one type of amino acids, one class of amino acid, that is alpha amino acid. So chemically, all these are possible. We have studied them as amino group, amine in chapter of amine, and even in carboxylic acid, you can have the same two things on the same carbon length at any distance, okay, from each other. But that remains the part of chemistry. But biologically, this is the chemical which forms the fundamental building block for proteins, and this is alpha amino acid. This is the basic formula for any amino acid. You have amino group, you have carboxylic group, you have hydrogen. This is also fixed. Only thing that is varying is now R. So depending upon what you have as an R, you have got 20 different type of amino acid which are possible or which have been known so far in the living organism in our human body. And listed here, you see they start from alanine, glycine, alanine, valine, and all these are basically the R group. The R group that I am talking about here, this one, okay. If you place in place of R hydrogen only, then it is becoming the simplest of amino acid, which we know as glycine. Glycine is the simplest of amino acid because you just replace R with hydrogen. Then the another simplest one goes as alanine, CH3 group. You have this group which will make it valine, leucine, isoleucine, arginine, lysine, glutamic acid, all these, okay. Let me not read out all the name. So all these groups, if you replace here, then that corresponding amino acid is created, okay. So this is a general formula for all the 20 amino acid which are basic amino acid in the living organism, okay. And all of them have been given a 3-letter symbol by procedure. So glycine is referred to as GLY, alanine is referred to as ALA. From the first 3 letters you can very clearly match here, okay. But in some cases there will be little changes, but I am saying that you don't have to know these things, okay. And again, what happens is, because they form very big chain molecules, sometimes even writing down 3-letter abbreviation is difficult, so we actually simply give them 1-letter symbol. So glycine is referred to as capital G, alanine is referred to as capital A, valine by B, arginine by R. Different letter also possible. Here you can see glutamine is referred to by Q, all these things, okay. And here you have some of the amino acid which also carry aromatic ring. You can see that. Can you see that? This is generally referred to as side chain of amino acid. Side chain. Because this forms like a main chain. And anyway, hydrogen is like a hanging around, so we don't call it a side chain, but whatever R group is referred to as side chain. Here it is written, okay. So you can form variety of amino acid, 20 different. One amino acid which is shown here is proline. This one, you can see that wherever you have a dash, that the part that will connect to this carbon, alpha carbon, okay. In all cases you can see that the dash part connects and then remaining thing hangs around, okay. One more aromatic amino acid I forgot, this phenylalanine. Yeah, this is also only. You can see one amino acid is shown here as a complete amino acid structure because it forms like a cyclic structure. So whatever group you have here R, it forms like a cycle with this NH2 group, and that's what is shown here. You can see here, this is your alpha carbon, in this case alpha carbon, and then this is NH2, and then this whole group then forms like a cyclic structure. So this proline has a very unique typical structure, and it's like a cyclic structure. So the complete amino acid is shown here. It's not just the side chain. You should not get confused. Now here is a important thing which is also mentioned in the book. Some of the amino acid has been asterisk here. You can see this one. These are referred to as essential amino acid. All the proteins are synthesized in our body, right? There is no protein that we intake directly and that works directly. No. Proteins are big molecule, I said that, and they have to be digested first. So the raw material which is available from the protein digestion is utilized by our system to create our protein, and that means all the amino acid should be available from outside only, correct? That is clear, there is no doubt about it. But some of the amino acids, like you see glycine, alanine and glutamine, some of these amino acids, they can also be synthesized by our body. Now it's not that they are synthesized directly, but some of the reactions they lead to the formation of side product as these amino acid. So I'm saying that some of the amino acid can still be prepared by biochemical reaction in our body, but some of the amino acids our body is not able to prepare, and these raw material have to be taken from outside raw material. That means whatever protein that you eat and that digest, and the raw material from there, that means the separated amino acid from there, that should supplement valine, leucine, isoleucine. If they are not there from outside source, we will be devoid of this and our protein synthesis processes will be affected, because these things can still be prepared by our body from further raw material, but these ones cannot be prepared. So these must be taken as supplement from our diet. Okay, anyway, they are abundant. I'm not saying they are not abundant, but I'm saying that they must be supplied only from outside. Our body takes them as raw material directly and then uses them as building block to build the protein. So these proteins which are written with the asterisk sign here, they are called essential amino acids. So they are not synthesized by our body, but there is something called non-essential amino acid. Non-essential amino acid our body is capable of. Body is capable, even though they are not available from the diet. I'm not saying that they, if suppose proline is available from the diet, our body will not be utilizing. No, our body can utilize that proline also which is available from the diet, but it can also prepare. That's what it means. Body is capable of synthesizing these amino acids. So they are called non-essential. But apart from that, what body is not capable of synthesizing and we must take them from outside, call as essential amino acid. Okay, essential. One important thing that you can note here, some of the amino acids are acidic in nature, some of the amino acids are neutral. Okay, amino acid like glycine, this is just hydrogen. Alanine like CH3, if you put here, it has got NH2 group which is basic, it has got COOH group which is acidic. So one basic, one acidic amino acid makes the whole amino acid as neutral. But in some of the amino acid, you can very easily note that there are multiple of NH group. You can see that this amino acid arginine has 3 NH group further. So this amino acid will be basic in nature because it has got more sites which can act as a basic site. There are amino acid which have more, which are like side chain carries extra COOH group here, aspartic acid, glutamic acid. So these are acidic amino acid. Okay, and there are ways of classifying even the amino acid. Okay, you can say that there are some amino acids which are neutral, there are some amino acids. Amino acid, please see, as long as you say just amino acid, it should be accounted as neutral because it is carrying one amino, one COOH group. But when you have the side chain carrying extra NH or COOH group, then it can be respectively either carrying acidic property or basic property. Otherwise it is supposed to be neutral. Okay, then there are many ways of classifying amino acid which are not given in the book, but I will just highlight very quickly here. You can see many of the amino acid are simple, like they are non-aromatic, okay, aliphatic, but a few are aromatic amino acids. So this is one way of also looking, because the properties of these amino acid will differ based on the aromaticity of the compound, the side chain that is available. Some of the amino acids are classified as hydrophilic and hydrophobic because some of them are highly soluble in water while others are not soluble. This kind of functional group which you have here, alkyl group, they will make the whole amino acid more and more unsoluble, because please see, NH2 group is a solubilizing group, COOH group is solubilizing group, but depending upon the nature of our group, the solubility of entire amino acid will be affected. Normally amino acids are water soluble, but the solubility will be affected based on the nature of R group. Okay, so there are hydrophobic and hydrophilic. You will see how they influence the protein fold. You can see all the amino acids are there in the in this whole of diagram. And suppose there is a circle, this small circle which is being considered here. This is the list of aliphatic amino acid: isoleucine, valine, leucine. That means they carry only the side chains which are aliphatic hydrocarbon, simple hydrocarbon. Then there are aromatic amino acids which are enlisted in this circle here, elliptical circle, phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan, and even histidine. Then you have positive amino acid like ionic. Some of them are basically ionized and give you cation. Some of them, they ionize, give you anion like aspartate, glutamate. So some of them are polar. That means they carry a huge dipole about it. So they carry a little bit different solubility property. Some of them, a large number of them, are also something called as hydrophobic. You remember in your chapter of adsorption, where we were discussing about the soap molecule. A huge side chain of the molecule is hydrophobic in nature, and the small portion of the molecule which is ionic and balanced by cation or something. So this is helping the solubilization in water, but this does not help. So if this does not help, what happens is all these molecules, they end up forming like a micellar structure. Remember, so the structure of a big assembly depends upon what kind of organic molecule you have and how long and what kind of these chains you have. Okay, so the hydrophobic, this is the part which is generally referred to as hydrophobic, and this is like a hydrophilic. Okay, hydrophilic, which is easily solubilized in water. So this will decide a lot about the structure of a protein. All right, so I'm just giving you a small idea here. There are variety of ways to classify even the amino acids. All right. Okay, coming back to this one. Yeah, now we need to look into the amino acid as a molecule itself. So I will pick up this general formula because we don't have to look into all this again individually. If you understand the property of this general formula, you understand a lot about every of these. Okay, each one of them. So I want to highlight a very important property discussed in your syllabus here, and that's called amphoteric nature of amino acid. Amphoteric nature of an amino acid. Now, what is the meaning of the word amphoteric? All of you know. Something which can act both. Right now, in this, the dual property will be acidic and basic nature. But in general, amphoteric, something which can have dual property. Similar manner, amino acids, it carry both amino group and carboxylic group. So that's why it can react with both acid and base. That's why it is amphoteric in nature. Can react with acid also, and it can also react with base because it carries both. If you look at the structure of this amino acid here, it carries common structure for all 20 amino acid. What differs is this R. Okay, so you can see that all of them have this group and this group together. Now whenever you have this kind of situation arising in a molecule where you have a group which can donate a proton and there is a group which can accept a proton, then sometime if you put this kind of molecule in water, actually the same molecule can release a proton, same molecule then takes a proton. Okay, so the part of it acts as a base and part of it acts as an acid. This can react with acid and base separately also, with another base, another acid, we will see that. But at the same time, within the molecule itself, if you put in water, that means in its aqueous solution, this releases proton and that is accepting the proton. So what happens is there is a formation of a very highly ionic species like this. You see here, this, say for example, carboxylic group has lost a proton and this has taken up the proton. So everything remains as it is, and this is like a highly solubilized species which is created because it has got both the charge on the same molecule. Okay, and this particular species, this type of species, if you remember, we encountered the similar species even in your the same chapter of adsorption, and we use some name to this kind of species. This is referred to as Zwitter ion. Zwitter ion. Okay, it's a ionic species given a specific name called Zwitter ion. So this is a Zwitter ion of any amino acid. Okay, most of the time in aqueous, in fact your amino acids are soluble in water. Almost all of the amino acids are soluble in water because they carry both of these groups. But their level of solubility might vary little bit due to the presence of different of R groups. So this form, which is a common form for all the amino acid, is referred to as Zwitter ion because now it is easily solubilized. It is carrying both cation and anionic site within the same molecule. Okay, Okay, and highlighting here that an amino acid can also react with both acid as well as base, so that's why it is amphoteric in nature. Okay, you have to keep these facts about the amino acid in your mind. Okay, all right, moving a little bit further, just further discussing about the property of amino acid. Here is a little discussion, not much, but about a very important property which plays a great role in structures. Okay, and that is about optical activity. Optical activity of amino acids. What is optical activity? We discuss a lot. We are discussing this from your 11th class. We discussed in your first chapter of organic chemistry, which is haloalkanes, okay, or aryl halides, basically in haloalkanes, remember. So what is optical activity? Any organic compound, if in that organic compound you find a carbon which is bonded with 4 different groups, all the 4 groups are different, then its mirror image will not be same. You know this, correct? In the similar manner, if you take this fact about this amino acid, you can look at, if it is not hydrogen, this R group is not hydrogen, then all the groups are different. You can see that. That means this kind of molecule, except in case of glycine, NH2, its mirror image will be, the mirror images will be different molecule. Okay, suppose if I draw the mirror image of this molecule here, C, I am representing by this dashed representation as if that bond is going behind the piece of this paper, and the solid wedge represent as if this bond is coming out of the piece of the paper. Oh sorry, here I should write R. This is R. And the solid bonds which are represented just by line, these are the bonds which lie in the piece of paper itself. Okay. Now this carbon is optically active. This carbon is optically active because if you have all the groups which are different, so this carbon is optically active. So except in case of glycine, the simplest of amino acid, where R is equal to hydrogen, right? Where R is equal to hydrogen, all the other 19 amino acids, all the other 19 amino acids will have optical activity. That means why we are saying this? Because their mirror images are different. Only for glycine the 2 groups are same, you know, 2 hydrogens on the same molecule in glycine, this and this, then that molecule's mirror image will be not different, it will be same. You rotate that molecule, it's the same molecule, but here the mirror images are different. So you get optical activity because they will rotate the plane of polarization of a plane polarized light differently. One will rotate the plane of polarization in the clockwise direction, one will rotate in the anti-clockwise direction. So if you call this isomer as plus isomer, which is a dextro, then naturally the other isomer becomes a levo isomer. Okay, this is something, the notation. One thing that I want to highlight here, okay, that is going to come back again in carbohydrate, that I'm saying that this is a positive, that means dextro, right? Suppose if I call this as a dextro, and this one as levo. Okay, then we understand the meaning of them, because one will rotate the polarization in the clockwise direction. So your optical activity will be seen as if the plane of polarized light is rotated in the clockwise direction. This will rotate the plane of polarization exactly in the opposite direction with the same magnitude. Okay, this way. So anyway, something that we know, these are just the representation of the configurations. Okay, so doesn't matter, I'm not changing the structure, but only switching some positions. So let me keep this in general notion. In any standard book you find, when you represent NH2 group on the left hand side, for example L configuration, the way in which we represent the same structure in the piece of plane is like this. You represent NH2 group on the left hand side, COOH group on the right hand side. This is your hydrogen, carbon is here, and this is your R. So this kind of representation, this way, there are ways to represent the configurations. Okay, so this is a representation of configuration to this kind of structure, and that's what is referred to as L. So this is referred to as L. So this is not about optical activity, remember. Okay, that's why I'm trying to make a sense here. This should not get confused, the DLN here, capital D and capital L, with the optical activity. Optical activity is represented by small l, small d, but that you cannot predict simply by looking at the structure, right? You have to measure. But one thing is for sure, if you call one is plus, another is by default negative. You could have found optical activity of plus in this, and then this becomes negative, right? Okay. But if you represent NH2 group on the right hand side, then you call this as the D configuration. NH2 COOH NH2 H and R. This is called as D configuration. Okay, these are just the representation, and you have to keep them in mind, because you are going to encounter the same thing in in case of configurations of sugars, which you are going to discuss in carbohydrates. Okay, so I'm cautioning you that don't get confused with this D as this D or this D as plus. This is optical activity. This is not optical. This is about representing the configuration with the standard notation. So nature has somehow preferred this levorotatory configuration, optically active isomer more over this. So your all these 20 amino acids, they are generally levorotatory, optically active, except this glycine, and they are, that's why in the book you will find that most of the time that your amino acid chain is represented from by writing NH2 group on the left hand side first, then COOH group. We will see that. Okay, so I'm writing here in living, in all these 20 essential amino acids, sorry, not essential, but all these 20 amino acids are levo isomers or levorotatory So that means with L configuration. Okay, L configuration is our notion, but I'm saying that they are levorotatory. Somehow nature has preferred only one particular optically active isomer for all of us, okay, to prepare the protein, because that's how it will retain certain pattern of structure. That's all is the answer other than. So then let's look at how the protein formation happens. These are just the raw material right now. Okay, so the protein formation in living system starts in a very complicated manner, but we are highlighting here just the chemistry of it. Okay, how it happens we are not going into that. If you are interested, you can talk to your biology colleagues, okay, and they will be able to explain it how it happens in the living organism, that means in the cellular system, how cellular machinery works in a very complicated manner, and the proteins are synthesized from amino acid. But let's look at their basic chemistry. The basic chemistry is very simple. Now this is a part of your organic chemistry. now polymer chapter is not there in fact in your syllabus, otherwise you would have studied that in the similar manner. You prepared the certain class of polymer which are known as polyamide. Okay, there is a formation of amide group. So for example, you have one amino acid here, this is one amino acid and this is another amino acid. If you dehydrate the two, because now you have got COOH group on one amino acid, NH2 group on the other amino acid. Okay, so this is the NH2 group here and there is a COOH group here I am highlighting, and dehydration process can be initiated under suitable conditions. In cells it happened with the mediation of catalyst, enzymes and all those things. Okay, very complicated structure involved. So you have water being removed and then there is a formation of amide group. You remember in the chemistry of NH2 group we have studied that it reacts with carboxylic group to form the amide group. So this bond which is formed, or this linking that is formed, is amide linkage. Okay, this is the first step of the starting of the polymerization. That means you have a linkage. Now you can think of what will happen. Now the same big chain, this is like a dimer, okay, or you call it as dipeptide. Now we are using the another term. There is a specific term that is used for the polyamino acid structure as polypeptide. Okay, polyamino acid in general is also referred to as polypeptide. Now here you can see there is a formation of dipeptide. Okay, polypeptide formation is happening. If you attach, now this dipeptide has got one NH2, one COOH group at its end, you can see that. Okay, and there is a formation of amide group with the dehydration. Further reaction will happen with another amino acid. Okay, and then you have tripeptide. So you have formation of dipeptide, then you have tripeptide, tetrapeptide, pentapeptide, okay, etc, etc, and up to decapeptide, sorry, yeah, we generally use these terms calling dipeptide, tripeptide up to decapeptide, but then we use a common term. If suppose the amino acid length is from 10 to approximately hundreds, approximately, then they are generally referred to as, that kind of polypeptide chain is generally referred to as polypeptide itself. Okay, then anything which is above 100 amino acid belongs to the class referred to as protein chain. Okay, now that doesn't mean you are referring to call these things as protein. Why is this some notion difference? Is only because normally the folded form proteins, you find that their length of amino acid is higher. Okay, the folded form active proteins generally they are higher, but if they are smaller chain polypeptide, then generally they don't have very specific structures. Some of the part are the loose and they are more flexible kind of polypeptide, but they are still active. Okay, but this is not a very clear cut distinction. Okay, even in a book they say that there is no clear cut distinction. For example, if you take a small protein like insulin, that is something which is below amino acid 100, but we call that as a protein. Okay, so don't worry too much about this. In general, you can say that all proteins are polypeptides. Okay, because they are all polymers of amino acid or the bond of amide bond, peptide bond. This bond which is referred to as amide bond is also referred to as peptide bond. That's why they are called as peptides, peptide bond. So some new terminologies are coming to you, but don't worry about that. Okay, to know all these protein, they are not random. Number one, there are facts about the protein. Now we are going to discuss the structure of the protein, so we are moving in that direction. Every protein, now when we say every protein, is got a fixed number of amino acid. This is a fact, fixed number of amino acid only. If you have a protein which is supposed to be this big number, let's say 5, something like this, or 1 2 3 4 5, whatever it is. If it is 3 here, it is only 3. Although you may say, how will it matter if you have one or more or less? It matters entirely to decide the structure of the protein. So this is not a random polymer. When you prepare the polymer in the laboratory, let's say polyethylene, polypropylene, anything, polyvinyl chloride, the chains are generally in a given polymer sample. The chains are of little bit varying sizes. Some of them are little bit bigger, some of them might be smaller, but that's like for the artificial polymers. But the way in which nature works doesn't work in a random way. It works in a very specific manner, and that's what brings a very specificity for every kind of action. So every protein has got a fixed number of amino acids. This is a fact. And they got this polymer formation, this polypeptide formation carries very specific sequence of amino acid. You don't have randomly. Okay, so when you say 100 amino acid of a protein, doesn't mean that you have a randomly any. For example, your certain protein will start in a certain region, let's say with phenyl, leucine. This is I don't know what is this, ACT. Okay, leave it. So then you have cysteine. These amino acids are very specific. You can't have just like DNA. The DNA genes, your gene is very specific sequence for any protein. That's the information, and the same information is encoded in the form of protein. So you get this amino acid must be here only. If it is at 99 number, it must be here. If it is this one 120, then it must be only this one only. You cannot have any other amino acid here, because that will change the protein. So this is something which is amazing about these kind of molecules which are protein, that number one, they have got fixed number of amino acid, and they have got very specific sequence of amino acid. No manipulation possible, otherwise that will not be that particular protein. It is that specific. Okay, so these are facts about the protein. Now we are going to look at starting from the simplest form of a protein. Okay, when it is being prepared, this chain length could be of any length depending upon which protein we are talking. As I said, that titine is a very big protein, and its chain length, that kind of so many number of amino acid, they are forming only one chain in a very specific manner, and then only it will be active. So the simplest form of the protein is referred to as primary structure of a protein, which is just the sequence of amino acid of a certain number. Okay, so primary structure means it's basically the sequence of amino is a chain. Here it is written. Okay, the sequence of specific sequence of amino acids, specific in number, again specific or fixed in number, I should use specific word, specific in numbers also. Okay, and so in the polypeptide chain of given protein. So the simplest form is like a sequence, that's all, nothing more than that. Okay, specific sequence and specific number of amino acid. If you try to simply put them on this piece of paper from left to right, go on like this, then it is called as primary structure. But that's what not is important, because that's not going to be active. It is like a simple random polymer chain. What happens when you put this chain in water? Now, as I said, here comes the role of the side chains. The amino acid is like going to be solubilized. Okay, it is going to be solubilized because every amino acid has got NH2 group and COOH group, like this one, correct? So these portion will solubilize, but depending upon the R group, now you see, if suppose this is hydrophobic group, then what will happen? That will tend to hide from water. If it is hydrophilic, it will tend to expose that portion to the water. So this competition of forces, various forces, is set up in the solvent when you put this in the solvent condition. Okay, your cellular structure, also where the protein is being synthesized, or let's say retained, or let's say transported from, it is mostly the aqueous medium. Your plasma, cellular plasma, the blood, they are mostly aqueous medium. That's why we are talking about water as a solvent here. So when you put this, what happens is some portion will try to hide away, some portion will tend to form hydrogen bonding with other kind of molecules specifically, and this will lead to very specific structure. And let me tell you, once in the cell, the protein, this chain is being synthesized, simultaneously it might be folding in a very fast time scale. Can you imagine very complex structures of protein? They are formed in the time scale of few microsecond to few millisecond small time scale. Of course, some of them might take for hours also, but I'm saying that some of them very complex structures are formed within few microsecond to few millisecond. No randomization, very specific structure. And that all this together forms the idea that how this challenging aspect I was trying to introduce, that how this protein folding happens, because that's a major problem that the scientific community doesn't understand completely. We only understand in bits and parts, but not completely. Because if we solve that problem, a lot of thing can be done in medical sciences, of course. So I'm just trying to give you perspective that how complicated this process of formation of a structure of a protein is from a linear polypeptide chain. Okay, so once you have this structure completely, then that protein, wherever it has to go, is sent, okay, transported in the living organism from the cellular machinery, and then it starts working for its function. Okay, so this is just the primary structure I introduced you. Okay, what is about then, once this structure is formed, now I am coming back to this primary structure. The primary structure, once it is formed, simultaneously, as I was saying, the competition is set between various regions of the polypeptide chain. So suppose this is the sequence of amino acid here. Here the balls are representing, let's say, still the chain of amino acid. What happens is sometimes some local structures are formed within the chain, okay, like this, which is referred to as alpha helix structure. Why this is formed? Because there is a formation of hydrogen bonding between the NH part, NH group of one amino acid in a certain part with the CO group. Okay, amide का जो CO group है, it may be having in some other part, it may be residing in some other part of the chain. So sometimes these kind of structures are formed, okay, and these are referred to as alpha helical structure. Just like in DNA, you know that even DNA structure is formed because of this kind of hydrogen bonding, but because of involvement of different molecules there. Right now I'm talking about amino acids. So there is a formation of these kind of hydrogen bonding. You see that hydrogen bonding has a role in biology completely. You see that, and this is what will retain these structures. So these are local structures formed in the chain first. So many of the protein, they carry small local structures like this alpha helix. Then also there are structures which happen between the same chain, let's say going in one direction and then coming back. So then side by side, here is within the chain formation of helix, but side by side also the hydrogen bonding is possible. So let's say this chain runs in one direction, then it curves around, or maybe this chain is interacting with some other part of the same chain, same protein, then there also might be formation of hydrogen bonding like this, okay, between the carbonyl of one part and NH of another part. So this kind of plated sheet kind of structure is formed. If you look at this, if you try to visualize these structures in 3 dimension, because carbon is a 3-dimensional tetrahedral geometry around carbon, right? So can you see that this like as if it is being digging into the piece of paper, then it is rising above the piece of paper, digging into the piece of paper, rising above the piece of paper. Like that kind of 3-dimensional geometry is achieved because of the carbon's own tetrahedral property. But apart from that, I'm saying, so it's like a sheet that is being formed, or sheet that is restricted for its geometry, and that is interacting with the other sheet formation on the other part. So these kind of sheets are referred to as beta plated sheet, or generally just the beta sheet. So there are alpha helical structure and beta plated sheet. Also there are smaller loops which are, these are very small loops. They are also formed because of some very loose interactions between the side chains here, small loops. Okay, so sometimes side chain interactions also interact. Here no interaction is being shown as if the R group is useless. No, actually these side chains can also interact with the other side chains. So that is not shown here, but right now it is emphasizing only the formation of beta sheet and alpha helix. These structures, which are local structures on the protein chain, smaller units, they are referred to as secondary structural element of protein molecule. Okay, you will not have to really know much about them, but I'm just saying try to get the understanding what leads to the entire protein formation. We are still done only with the primary structure, which is the simplest sequence of amino acid. This is our way of understanding, not that they exist only that or this. No, it will be only folded form that will exist, but I'm saying that how do we expand our understanding? Only by understanding everything from simple to complex. So simplest form of aligned, in a stretched out form, we call it as primary structure. Secondary structure means the one which is the built up of smaller units of the structure are referred to as secondary structure. Now what happens, and then these smaller structures, they also compact out. Okay, the whole of this unit may be interacting with this unit, or this unit may be interacting with other unit, and that will lead to the more complex tertiary structure. Okay, here I think yeah, tertiary structures are formed then, because one unit interacting with the other unit, and these local interactions, they lead to the formation of the tertiary structure. Although they are not shown here to avoid the complications, but try to understand what you are seeing in the form of ribbon are these beta sheets. Okay, they are carrying these amino acids, and what you are seeing here, the ribbons are alpha helix. Ribbons are alpha helix, and these sheets are called as beta sheets. So not all the protein may have both the kind of unit. Some of the protein may have only alpha helix, some of the protein may have only beta sheet. They may be rich in beta sheet, some of them might be having both kind of structures. So you can see that they lead to a specific structural formation. You may be wondering, what is this structure? Why are we calling this a specific structure and useful? It looks so random. It looks random, but it is only that structure. Only one particular structure is attained by one protein. That is why it is specific. That's why it is important. Okay, if it is not this structure, it will not act. It's useless. Okay, you can see very unique kind of structures are formed, and they are responsible. Well, depending upon where these proteins work, they sometimes generate a richness of the surface which is more hydrophobic and hydrophilic. In cellular membrane, there are many protein which actually are part of the cellular membrane, right? You call them as channels, and they are also responsible for the structure of this membrane. You remember that nowadays at least you have heard of this coronavirus and all those things, so you know that how it attaches. Coronavirus comes with the spikes. These spikes of coronavirus are actually protein of its own, and they attach to specific protein on the surface of this cell wall, and somehow this interaction forms the bonding happening, and then this releases its own RNA, and then the whole replication process begin. So it's, you see that all these interactions, all these processes, biological processes, they are mostly the interaction of protein and protein. So there is a whole area called protein interaction. Protein interaction. You understand this protein interaction, you do good, and how strong the interaction. So one of the ways in which you can devise that the coronavirus does not affect is somehow, can you break this interaction? What can you do to break this interaction? So these are the strategies then thought out in the medical world, okay, to devise the medicine. Or let's say, can you change this protein at the DNA level so that it doesn't form a kind of let's say hook it doesn't hook up with this. So you try to do many things simply to avoid this interaction happening. The primary for the entire process. Okay, so this is just one example. Many things happen in this manner. Okay, so some of the protein, as I said, they reside in the membrane. Now membrane is like a hydrophobic region. Okay, so these protein must be such that they should be solubilized by the membrane, or they should be able to So there are protein which will carry the surface which is mostly hydrophobic in nature, but there are protein like hemoglobin or myoglobin. They have to reside in aqueous phase of cellular, let's say of blood plasma. Then their surface will be mostly hydrophilic, rich in hydrophilic amino acid residues. Okay, so there is a hydrophobic surface versus hydrophilic surface of various protein, and that leads to different structure sometimes. For example, some of the protein, they form the compact structure, okay, and they reside in the aqueous solvent freely, like this one. This is one of the protein which is also, this is responsible for the storage of oxygen in our muscles. Myoglobin, hemoglobin gives the oxygen to this, and this stores the oxygen for its further usage. So you can see that it's more like a spherical structure, globular. Generally the term which is used to refer to these kind of structures are globular. Okay, and then there are protein which will be, let's say, kind of this. These are like just the sheet alpha helical structure, and these are fibrous protein. So they are part of muscles, they act like spring. Okay, for us, we will stretch out the muscles and all those things. So the collagen is one example of this fibrous protein. So these are term just sometimes to refer which one has a more of a compact spherical structure, we call them as globular. And there are general protein which are fibrous nature, so like, very long chain kind of structures. But apart from that, you also have hydrophobic, hydrophilic kind of structures, but don't worry too much because these are not very specific classifications. So you find, depending upon the role of the protein, its surface and structure entirely. Okay, and we use different terms to refer to them. Then the story doesn't end for many protein here. Many protein will be active in this once this formation happens in the tertiary form. This is called tertiary structure. But okay, let me here today. There are a large number of protein which don't work here until here. A large number of protein, actually, once they form this primary structure, then either 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of these kind of structure, they also associate with them. Please try to understand, this entire thing is just like one molecule with the covalent bonding between the units, right? There is no disconnection. But if one of this molecule can associate with the another molecule, then a bigger assembly is formed, and that's what is referred to as quaternary structure. Here I have taken the example of famous example of hemoglobin. Your hemoglobin does not exist as one monomer. Okay, you have primary sequence of hemoglobin, let's say this, secondary structure formation will happen, and then tertiary structure formation. So this is like a one molecule, but then this is not going to be active, so it has to associate, form 4 units together. Then hemoglobin, this complete thing is referred to as hemoglobin, because it can bind with 4 oxygen at the same time. This is for variety of reason that you will not be able to discuss right now, but for variety of reasons, to increase the efficiency, specificity of oxygen transfer and release of it, this kind of assembly is necessary. There is a whole lot of chemistry about it, controlled by physical factors. So that's a unique thing. But anyway, right now I'm saying that for some protein, they have to further associate to form even the bigger assemblies. These are assemblies. Okay, so quaternary structure is like a assembly of more than one three-dimensional, more than one molecule of a protein, of a folded protein, Okay, so then there is another example I have taken, and you can see here, and this is a DNA binding protein. You don't have to worry about this, just to increase your perspective. This is a DNA binding protein. When the DNA replication has to happen, to transfer the information, it requires a lot of protein to bind to unfold the DNA itself, and control the process. So there are proteins involved even in the cellular nucleus. So you can see that there is a primary sequence, these are secondary structural element, this is one monomer. You can see how uniquely structure is formed, and then three monomer, they joined together to form an assembly. That is what is referred to as quaternary structure. But not for this. These kind of structures are only for few protein. A large number of protein are active only in the tertiary form itself. Okay. So here is one just final slide I have taken. This shows few examples of protein assemblies in your living system which are found. Now hemoglobin is actually, this is a small structure you can see here, hemoglobin, and hemoglobin has a molecular mass of roughly 65,000 gram per mole. Remember this, I told you water has just 18 gram per mole, right? Compare this with this. So this is your water molecule, gram per mole. This is your hemoglobin, and so big. Now you can have so complex and bigger assemblies of very specific structure active. These are just few of the example which have been picked up, and they are all working in your living organism, in your system itself. Okay, and this is a very big virus assembly, which itself is a protein completely of various unit assembled together to form big assembly. This is also a virus kind of protein. Okay, so I'm just trying to give you perspective what protein really mean. Protein is all about the structures. It is all about the specific structures which are specifically active to carry out very specific tasks. And let me tell you, it's amazing. There is a whole area called biophysics, and that is what deals with the knowledge. That is what deals to decode these kind of problem. How do you know the structure of DNA's helical structure? Only with the studies of something called as biophysics, which combines the knowledge of chemistry, physics, computer, maths, everything together to understand and decode these problems. Okay? Well, we'll stop here today.